Hi, this is Sean Perrin, and you're listening to episode 34 of the Clarineat podcast, the show where I discuss all that's new and neat with clarinet with the neatest people in the industry. Woodwind player Bret Pimentel is comfortable in a wide variety of musical settings. He is at home with the classical solo repertoire of the flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, and saxophone, as well as chamber music, symphonic, jazz, rock, and pop. In addition to the major modern woodwind instruments, he is also skilled at a variety of world woodwinds and the Akai electronic wind instrument. Bret teaches applied oboe, clarinet, bassoon, and saxophone at Delta State University, as well as chamber music, woodwind methods, and jazz courses. In 2014, he won the Humanities Teacher Award from the Mississippi Humanities Council. Bret's website, bretpimentel.com, is a go-to resource for woodwind players and teachers who visit for thoughtful blog posts and other resources and tools, including the Woodwind Doubling in Musicals list and the Fingering Diagram Builder. Bret's writing has also been published in the Instrumentalist magazine and in the Clarinet, for which he currently co-writes the Clarinet Cash column. He is a frequent presenter and performer at conferences of the National Flute Association, International Double Reed Society, International Clarinet Association, and North American Saxophone Alliance. Bret received the Doctor of Musical Arts degree from the University of Georgia with an emphasis in multiple woodwinds performance. His master's degree, also in multiple woodwinds, is from Indiana University, and his bachelor's degree in saxophone performance is from Brigham Young University. In this episode of the podcast, we discuss Bret's blog and website, his contribution to the Clarinet magazine as a co-writer of the Clarinet Cash column, his doubling career, and his work as a professor at Delta State University. Students, make sure to stick around all the way to the end, where Dr. Pimentel shares some valuable audition tips. The giveaway for this episode is a gold-plated D'Addario H ligature with cap. To make sure you're eligible to win items mentioned on the podcast, including an upcoming giveaway for a Bakun Alpha clarinet, make sure to sign up for our emailing list at www.clarineat.com. You'll also receive content updates, special offers, coupons, and more right to your inbox. Today's episode was brought to you by D'Addario Woodwinds. Sanding, shaping, balancing. For centuries, mastering your instrument meant mastering these crafts too. But now, D'Addario is refining craftsmanship for the 21st century by refining their reeds and mouthpieces with the world's most innovative techniques, so you can spend less time sanding, shaping, and balancing, and more time perfecting your own craft. To learn more about the new era of craftsmanship from D'Addario Woodwinds, visit d'addario.com/woodwinds. So I'm here today with Bret Pimentel. Welcome to the show, Bret.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So let's first talk about your popular website and blog, which can be found at bretpimentel.com. It looks like you've been actively posting here since way back in 2001. Is that accurate?
Well, I've been actively blogging since about 2008. There are some older things that I posted retroactively. A lot of them were papers I wrote in school and stuff like that.
Okay. I thought that the actual domain had been active at those points since then, but that's still pretty impressive. So what got you started with this sort of contributing to the community in this way, and what keeps you going?
Well, I had a website back as early as 2000. I was on GeoCities, for those that are old enough to remember the bad old days. But about 2008 or so, I was working on my doctoral degree. And my thought at the time, I'm not sure that I was right about this, my thought at the time was if I put some stuff out there about myself, maybe that would help me get a university teaching job. I'm not sure that really contributed, but it did bring some other benefits, some of which I didn't really expect.
So the GeoCities, I actually remember that too, back in those days. So WordPress, though, is quite a step up from that. And your website is really minimalist, very gorgeous design, I think. But what are you hoping to accomplish with the posts that you make on there? Who's the target market?
Well, really, I'm writing for myself. So I write posts sometimes that are about kind of technical woodwind related stuff. Sometimes it's more about teaching. Sometimes it's kind of general music things. So basically, I'm writing the kind of articles I'm interested in reading. I have a few, I have some faithful readers who I think are reading everything that I write, but I get a lot of traffic through Google of people looking for certain things and finding it somewhere buried on my site.
Yeah, the Google traffic is quite interesting because nowadays, anyone can just search something and find you, whether they know you or not, we didn't have that back in the day of GeoCities, that's for sure.
Yeah, that works out well because, if I write something about, clarinet embouchure and then several years go by, you might not find it very easily if you just visit the site. But if you're Googling for it, then you can find anything.
So some of the content on there is like strictly professional, really advanced stuff, and other stuff is more lighthearted, kind of like that practice diet routine or something with the donut you posted the other day. And there's also that fun Pokemon Go styled Go practice sign. Why do you think sort of having a sense of humor mixed in is important on a website like that?
Well, again, it's mostly for my own entertainment. When I do something that has a little bit of a humorous slant to it, sometimes that brings in a little additional traffic, which is fun. Or when I post something like that, what I really would like to happen is for that to attract readers who are going to click through and look at my more serious posts and hopefully come away with some useful information.
Yeah, well, I think it worked because, I mean, even the little Pokemon Go thing, where did that come from, by the way? How'd you think of that?
Oh, I don't know. It just popped into my head one day.
Yeah, I just printed one off to hang up in my studio, actually. I think it's going to be quite a hit. But I think it does lead to click-through traffic, and I bet that people do end up reading some of the different posts. Let's say that we just clicked on the Pokemon Go thing. We get to your website. Where's the top 3 places you'd hope we'd go? Like, we can't talk about every post that you've made, obviously, but sort of just like a taster.
Yeah, well, I write blog posts about all of the woodwinds, including sometimes world instruments or electronic wind controllers, things like that. So, if you are coming and you're interested in a specific instrument, then I hope that you'll find information that is useful to you, whether as a player or as a teacher or both. So that would be one thing. There are a few other resources here that I think are useful and are especially popular. I have the fingering diagram builder, which you can use to make fingering charts in a sort of point and click way. So that's been very popular and it seems to be useful to a lot of people. I have a lot of Woodwind doublers that visit my site, and I have a list of Woodwind doubling requirements for Broadway musicals or Broadway style musicals. That's over 1,000 shows, and I get a surprising amount of traffic to that. People coming to visit and see, for this show, what Woodwind doubles do I need if I get the gig.
What are your maybe top 3 posts then of all time as far as traffic goes?
Oh, let's see. There's one that I wrote originally as a paper in graduate school about the materials that woodwind instruments are made out of and the effect that it does or doesn't have on the sound of the instrument.
Oh, wow.
And that is not based on my own research. It's based on reading of acoustical journal articles and so forth. And it turns out there's 100 years of research dealing with this. I get a lot of traffic about that, especially when there's an argument going on some internet message board and somebody posts that link. Argument. I get a ton of traffic and not a lot. I get some angry comments about the conclusions that I come to on that.
Oh, really? Interesting. So what are those conclusions? Like, is it a bit of a placebo effect, you think, or?
Well, I tend to think so. If the materials make a difference, it seems to be very small, if at all. But in the article, I talk a little bit about some of the problems of trying to prove that scientifically. It's a difficult thing to nail down. Mm-hmm. So, as we know, 2 different clarinets play differently from each other, even if they're the same brand, same model, made from the same materials. So it's a little bit hard to isolate the variables.
Yeah, it's very interesting because back, I can't remember the years now, but the metal clarinets I heard were actually quite popular, even with orchestral players for a lot of years. And then they really fell out of favor. Now obviously, the wooden ones have always been popular, but now we have, hard rubber and other materials that are allegedly better than plastic, but it is hard to say because people have their own preferences and who knows what else affects it, right?
Yeah, I think you'd be hard pressed to in a blind test to tell the difference between a metal clarinet and a wooden clarinet. You would be able to tell, I think, that they're different clarinets, but I'm not sure you could listen to it and say, oh, that one's metal. There are people will get angry comments about this. There'll be people that'll write in and say, well, I can tell the difference.
Yeah, no, I mean, and, it's true. It's funny how that happens. But saxophones, for example, have always been made out of metal, and along with brass instruments, and they seem to have no problem that way. So, yeah, let's not have too many angry comments. But so what's the second post then? So that's maybe one of the most popular ones. What else?
One of the most popular ones. Let's see. I get a lot of Google traffic on one that I wrote about why tuned to the oboe in an orchestra.
Oh, yeah, I actually read that one.
Yeah, that one gets a lot of Google traffic. It seems to be a popular question that people are asking.
So in a nutshell, what's the answer?
Well, it seems to mostly just be tradition. And I didn't come to any real solid conclusions in that article other than there are a lot of theories out there that don't make sense to me. People say, oh, the oboe, well, that's the one that can't be tuned, so everybody else has to tune to that, which doesn't make sense in the context of a professional orchestra. Like if the oboist comes in playing 20 cents sharp, like the entire orchestra is going to tune up to that.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. And the oboe can be tuned. It doesn't have a tuning mechanism like the clarinet does where you can pull out the barrel, but any oboist worth their salt has a case full of reeds that play at different pitch levels and will make other adjustments for it.
Yeah, can't you adjust with your face as per any other wind instrument as well?
You can. Like with any other woodwind, you will get pretty tired pretty quick if that's how you're doing it.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Interesting.
make little adjustments on the fly, then you can.
So what about a third post then? What's the third one we could kind of highlight here?
I wrote a post at one point about why music education majors in college really need applied study, why they need to take lessons on their instrument. Which, I don't know that there are a lot of people out there that really disagree with me about that. But it's something that I was thinking about because my students are mostly music education majors and mostly are enthusiastic about playing music. But every so often I get one who feels like they shouldn't have to learn to play to a high standard. So I wrote a post about that, about why it's so important.
I'm going to make sure to link to these three in the show notes there. And that one actually is interesting to me as well, because it's funny, when I was in university, in my undergrad, I noticed that actually was happening, is that by third year, a lot of the ed majors no longer were required to take lessons. But a lot of the best players that I knew were ed majors and were continuing their lessons regardless of that. Why do you think that happens? Why is that accepted?
Why is it accepted that music education majors can take fewer credits of lessons?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry.
Yeah, I can't think of a good reason why that should be acceptable. I do know that in our music education degrees here, and I think this varies state to state depending on state certification requirements for teachers, but I know here the music education degree is very intense. The music education majors have to do almost everything that the performance majors do. Plus, they have to take all of these education classes. They have to do a teaching internship or student teaching experience. And so they're really overwhelmed with the number of classes and things that they have to take. So that's the best guess I can make, is that, there's just too many things and something has to go. I think that's a mistake to cut the applied study.
It's funny, though, too, because I feel that in the same sort of breath, a lot of performance majors lack some of the understanding of other instruments that would come from, here we call it, what do we call it, like a brass tech sort of class where woodwind players have to learn about brass instruments, and that's what the ed majors have to take. And also pedagogically, sometimes they're a little bit lacking from that sort of training. So what would you say to performance majors who want to expand their educational sort of understanding as well?
Yeah, I feel like a performance curriculum really needs to have a pedagogy component to it. And a lot of universities do have, a pedagogy class. I think it would be nice if that was more than one semester. Again, you run into problems of you add something and what are you going to cut to make room for it?
Absolutely, yeah.
But those that see themselves going into performance, almost nobody in the world makes their living just from performing. Many of the great performers are supplementing their income with teaching. And I think you have to be prepared to do that, whether it is, in a university setting or whether it's just teaching lessons out of your home or whatever it is. One of the best things that I did in college was to scrounge up some jobs teaching lessons. So I was teaching out of a music store. I was teaching at this little private music school, and that was a wonderful experience. And that's experience that I put to use every day now as a university woodwinds professor. But that was a kind of low stakes situation where I could make some mistakes in my teaching and try some things and see what worked. And I had a fallback that I had great teachers that I could go talk to and say, I'm having this problem with a student, and what do you suggest? And, I didn't really have a strong curriculum for that in the 3 college degrees that I did, but doing that on the side became an important aspect of my education, plus earned me a little rent money.
Absolutely. So yeah, in a nutshell, I think then ed majors, I think you're sort of advocating they try and pursue a high level on their instrument. And is there another post that talks about performance majors with pedagogy as well, or is that maybe one coming up?
I don't think that I have a post about that, but that's an interesting idea. Maybe I'll have to get to work on that one.
Yeah, no, I think this is some really great stuff. And by the way, to listeners, there must be dozens, if not hundreds, of posts on your website now of similar sort of quality. Is it hundreds? How many approximately?
Oh, it must be somewhere in the ballpark of 500.
Wow. So all articles that are, they're well thought out. They're good discussion points, and with lots of stuff, you don't necessarily have to agree to read the facts and take in, or even not facts, maybe just new information or different information. So it's definitely worth checking out. You seem like
absolutely, and I have a comments section too. So if you read something and you disagree with it and want to engage in some conversation, then I'm up for that.
I might be going out on a limb here, but you seem like a realist. Very evidence-based kind of, would you say so?
Well, yes, I try to be. My feeling is that there's a lot of woodwind teaching that is vague. Mm-hmm. I did a project over the summer where I was rereading a lot of pedagogical books on woodwind playing, and I was just kind of disappointed by what I found. There's so many really important concepts, some that I talk about a lot on my blog, like voicing or like breath support, that kind of get mentioned in passing and not really taught in a very clear way. And so I get students all the time that they know they're supposed to do breath support because their school band directors or whatever have been yelling at them about it. And I say, okay, tell me about breath support. How do you do breath support? And they don't know. Mm-hmm. No wonder their band directors have been frustrated. So I try really hard to be as clear and precise as I can. And lately I've also been trying to make an effort to be less wordy, to be able to define something like breath support and to put it in a nice, clear, simple way that someone can grasp and take with them and use. So I try to avoid some of the problems where people talk about, they're trying to teach a pedagogical concept, but they're talking about anatomical things that are not grounded in reality, or they're talking about acoustical things that don't match with the way acoustics work. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of room there for woodwind teachers, probably not just woodwind, but certainly woodwind teachers to embrace a more scientific approach.
Yeah, you actually remind me of episode 4. I talked to a guy named Daryl Caswell, who's an engineer, and he teamed up. He's also a horn player, but he teamed up with an oboist to design a better reed knife. And one of the things that he thinks led him to the best knife possible was that he didn't know anything and didn't want to know anything about the mythology of making reeds. He just wanted to know, how can I make a damn sharp knife, and how can it work the best? And he left it at that.
I have one of those knives. It's great.
Oh, really? Oh, I should let him know that. That's great. Yeah, Landwell, right? Landwell knives.
Yep.
Fantastic. So I wanted to talk about the tools on your site. You've got one called the Reedcast, which is really it's a great name. Obviously, it's a forecast for your reeds.
That's right. That's one that I released as an April Fool's joke.
And it was funny because I went in there this morning and I laughed out loud because it said unpropitious. How do you say that word? Unpropitious?
Oh, unpropitious, I think.
Yeah, I just laughed. So it's funny because it had a little graphic of a bomb next to my reed, and that's pretty much exactly what it's like here. So I know that one's...
The real thing that it does is it gives you a weather report and elevation and maybe some other information that would be relevant to reed performance. But yeah, then it always just gives you a terrible forecast of gloom and doom about how your reeds are going to perform that day.
So that one is a joke, but it's actually really funny because it actually does, even though it's a joke, it provides useful information that you can actually use to kind of think about your reeds and how they should be kept. And I think it's kind of a little bit of a, I don't know, it's, why did you come up with it? Well, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, well, my original idea was to try and do one for real. I was doing a little bit of traveling at the time, going to places at different elevations and trying to figure out, how this is going to affect my reeds, how I can make sure my reeds are at their best. And so I was going to look into existing research about maybe elevation, maybe about climate, about humidity, so forth, see what conclusions I could draw about that. And looked into it, and there just wasn't enough research to come up with anything solid. But I do try and do an April Fool's joke every year on the blog, and so I thought, well, maybe I'll do that and put together kind of a fake one of those that just every day tells you that your reeds are going to be awful. But I did end up actually incorporating the weather forecast information. Yeah,
it's really funny. So you have a couple more things. The fingering diagram builder is just really, really cool and really brilliant. I think it works for any woodwind instrument. Is that how it's?
Yeah, well, certainly all of the major ones and a number of minor ones. If you're into this, you can also do like brass valved instrument fingerings, or even like piano chords. But yeah, the original idea, this was scratching my own itch. I was teaching a woodwind methods class. I think you referred to it a moment ago as like a woodwind tech class. Mm-hmm. I was teaching that class, and I was a graduate student at the time. Someone else selected the textbook, and it had this terrible, terrible bassoon fingering chart in it that was almost illegible and full of mistakes. And I had made fingering charts before where I'd kind of painstakingly drawn these little diagrams and then filled in the fingerings for them. And I thought, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so that's where the idea kind of hatched that maybe I could create a web tool for it. And it turned out at the time I did not have the web skills, did not have the programming skills to make it happen. I made several attempts over several years and stalled out on all of them until it finally came together.
So you got a few other things on here too. I'm going to be installing your little WordPress plugin for displaying accidentals properly on websites. You designed that code yourself, or that plugin?
I did, yeah. That's a pet peeve of mine when people use like a lowercase b for a flat or a pound sign for a sharp. So I wanted an easy way to do it on my own blog.
Yeah, I'm going to be adding that because it's a pet peeve of mine, but I didn't know there was a solution. So that's a really great idea. Also, you've got the random note picker.
Yes.
What is this intended to be used for?
That was also something that I wanted. I have students come in and I quiz them on their scales. So I wanted a good random way to select scales for them to play.
Absolutely.
So I hear from people using it for all kinds of different things. It was used for some kind of online contest recently where you use that to generate a chord progression and then write a song based on it.
And of course, from a web design perspective, these sort of tools are great because it keeps people coming back, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I earn a very small amount of income from my website through some advertising and so forth. But this really is a labor of love. I'm fortunate enough to have a full-time job that pays the bills. So, the website, really what I want out of that is for it to be useful to people. And it puts me in touch with people that I never would have heard from. That's been the most surprising and wonderful thing about it, is that I hear from especially woodwind players all over the world that write in just to say hello, or they have questions, or so that's been really fun.
It is amazing. I find the same thing with Clarineat. It's connected the whole community for me. I'm reaching all kinds of people all over the world I never would have even heard of before. So it's so cool.
Yeah.
Check that out, everybody. He's got a lot of great stuff there. You can check your reed forecast just for fun. You can check out the fingering diagram. He's got all kinds of links and a blog roll, and there's all sorts of stuff on here. And of course, that random note picker thing. I'm actually going to try that with a few students, and I've been looking for something like that. One more thought about this before we move on, but have you ever thought about doing up an iPhone app with some of these little tools in it?
I get that suggestion a lot. I am not an Apple user myself. Nothing against it, just not what I use. And to do that kind of stuff, it requires a lot of investment. It seems like you have to actually buy a Macintosh computer to create an app, and you have to, pay fees and everything to have your app submitted. So it's not really on the horizon at this point. If I was going to do an app, it might be an Android app first, since that's what I use, and it's a lot cheaper to develop an app that way. But really, I try to make everything so that it is usable in a mobile browser. So even something as complicated as a fingering diagram builder, you can use on your phone just by navigating to it in your browser.
Yeah, sorry, I meant like any sort of, what would you call that, portable phone app? Android or iPhone, I guess, Apple. But yeah, the startup costs are tough with that. I don't know how people get going with it. But so let's move on to your work with the International Clarinet Association. You're a co-author of the Clarinet Cash article that comes out in the Clarinet magazine. I was so happy that you guys featured Clarineat last month. Thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What kinds of things are you looking to accomplish with this article, and what does it offer the clarinet community in the digital age?
Mm-hmm. Well, I am relatively new to it. It was originally written by Rachel Yoder, who now is the editor of the entire journal, and Kelly Lignitz-Hahn. And, honestly, I'm not sure I'm saying that name right. She and I have never met in person. We do all of this online. But the two of them were writing it, and it essentially has been kind of roundups of clarinet-related web links. And so that goes in the print journal, and it also goes online, and that's probably the more convenient version because you can click through to things. So the effort there has been to highlight online content related to the clarinet. In the future, we are looking at, and in fact just finished writing the first in a series of articles about creating your own web presence. So we think that hopefully will be useful to clarinetists out there who are interested in doing that and maybe aren't sure where to start, or are worried that it will be too technical or something like that.
That's a great idea. So basically help in what your website should display and how to get it there?
Yeah, what kinds of tools you might use. Do you need to be very tech savvy? Does it cost money? We're trying to answer those kinds of questions.
It is amazing how important a web presence seems to be this day and age.
Yeah.
It's really quite interesting, but it's also amazing. Of course, as musicians, we don't actually know a lot about web design, so that's a great idea.
Yeah, we hope that'll be useful to people.
So yeah, I think it's a great article. Again, I'll link to that in the show notes. And it comes out, is it every quarter or twice a year?
Yeah, it's quarterly.
Quarterly, yeah. So there's every publication of the Clarinet magazine, I believe, has that article in it.
Yeah, it's a regular column. It's in just about every issue.
If you're not receiving the Clarinet magazine, by the way, make sure to register as a member of the International Clarinet Association, and you'll receive that 4 times a year. It's really, I feel like that in itself is worth it, along with the connections you can make and meeting people, and of course heading out to the Clarinet Fest, which I had a lot of fun at this past summer, as I mentioned a few episodes ago. So.
Yeah.
So of course you're also a doubler, but yes. Really I almost feel like it's not a good word, because you also play the double reed, so almost like a tripling or quadrupling type person. I can't even imagine. What's it like?
I'm glad you bring that up because I really enjoyed your series that you did with Ed Jaffe.
Oh yeah, we just kept going. There's 3 episodes there. I think 17, 18, 19. Yeah,
it was great, and I don't dare try and come across here like I'm disagreeing with anything that he said, because he's brilliant. He plays circles around me and around most of us mere mortals, I think, and has just a wealth of information. I've not met him, but I have the greatest respect for him. But let me throw this out there, though, that in my mind there's sort of 20th century woodwind doubling and there's 21st century woodwind doubling. And 20th century woodwind doubling is that sort of quintessential flute, clarinet, saxophone doubler. Mm-hmm. But my feeling is that in the 21st century, that's going by the wayside. It has to be flute, clarinet, saxophone, all at a high level, plus double reeds, plus more. If you look at, I mentioned I have my Woodwind Doubling list on my site. And if you look at some of the older shows, the shows kind of from the golden era of Broadway, kind of mid-20th century, the woodwind doublers in those shows often are playing flute, clarinet, and saxophone. And when you look at the parts, you can see that really all of the flute solos all show up in one book, and all the clarinet solos all show up in one book. And so they kind of have specialists who are the clarinet soloist, but they can play a little saxophone, a little flute. It's getting to be less and less that way. The woodwind sections in shows are getting smaller and smaller, but there are more and more instruments. So it's very common now to see a Broadway show where there is only one woodwind player, but they're playing piccolo and flute and alto flute and oboe and English horn and clarinets in a few different sizes and saxophones and sometimes world instruments, bamboo flutes or penny whistles or recorders or all kinds of things. And it's getting to be more and more that way, where not only do you have to play more instruments, but you have to be the soloist on each one of those instruments. So I think that we're seeing it's kind of an arms race. One person adds an instrument to their arsenal, and then everybody else has to do it too.
It's almost like being a percussionist.
Yeah. Well, I finally realized one day when somebody called me for a show, and there was an instrument on the show that I'd never played before, and I said, "Yeah, no problem." And I realized, my attitude has changed here from being, okay, these are the instruments that I play, to this kind of attitude of if it's a woodwind, then I'm your guy. So the woodwind doubler these days is kind of the test pilot, I think, where you throw anything at them and they say, yeah, I think I can fly that.
So, I mean, how do you even go? I imagine the upkeep costs and purchasing instruments is one thing, but, well, I want to get back to that too, actually, but how do you even go about starting a practice day then? I mean, with 6 or 8 instruments, it must be very difficult.
Well, it is, and there's not a good solution to that. If you look at a top clarinetist, who's winning top orchestral auditions and say, okay, how many hours a day is that person practicing to play at that level? I can't practice more than that. I can't practice around the clock. There are only 24 hours in the day. So when you're doubling, you're always dividing your time. And you need to practice as efficiently as you can, but those top clarinetists are doing that too.
Yeah.
So part of it for me when I decided, okay, doubling is going to be my path here, was that I had to decide to be okay with that. I was a saxophone major as an undergraduate student. And then for my graduate degrees, I did doubling, did 5 instrument degrees. Degrees in 5 instruments, I mean, and thought, okay, when I do this, that means my progress on the saxophone is going to have to slow down a little bit. And I had to kind of come to terms with that. So when it comes to a day of practicing, really most days, honestly, it's triage. I'm looking at, which patient is currently hemorrhaging the worst and can I save them? And sometimes you can't save them, but, it's looking at what gig is coming up and, in a week, I need to sound like an orchestral clarinetist because I'm playing with the symphony. Then the clarinet gets put a little more heavily into the rotation. Ideally, if I'm not panic practicing for the next gig, then what I like to do is rotate instruments. So I feel like it's not really useful to try to cram all of my instruments into every day, but it's also not especially useful if I practice, clarinet all day today and saxophone all day tomorrow. So what I try to do is get a rotation going where maybe on Monday I practice flute and oboe and clarinet, and then Tuesday maybe it's oboe and clarinet and bassoon. And then maybe the next day it's clarinet and bassoon and saxophone. And if I can get a rotation like that going, then each instrument gets practiced a few days in a row and then collects dust for a few days. But hopefully I can devote enough time to it within a single day to make some progress and get some momentum going.
What about the upkeep of reeds and maintenance? It must be an enormous cost and time commitment in its own way.
Yeah, it is. I have, out of necessity, learned to do a lot of smaller repairs myself. because it's just too expensive. If every time a little cork bumper or something fell off one of my instruments, I had to go pay somebody to do it, I'd go broke. So I learned to do some of the smaller repairs myself. When it comes to reeds, yeah, that's huge. And I make my own oboe reeds. I make my own bassoon reeds. A lot of doublers don't do that, and frankly, a lot of doublers probably shouldn't do that. It's such a time commitment and such a financial investment to buy the equipment that you need. For me, in my university job, I teach oboe and I teach bassoon. And so I feel like it's important for me to be able to teach those skills, and to be able to teach those skills, I need to be able to do those skills. So I make my own oboe and bassoon reeds. That's a calculated decision, and it is a lot of time and a lot of work. But I'm able to make it work for me.
Well, it was funny because I remember when I talked to Ed again at Joffe. For those who don't remember, his episode 17, 18, 19, we had quite a lengthy talk about doubling and all this stuff. But he had said, I think, he was going to a rehearsal, and then he told me he had like a 3-hour reed working on session in the afternoon, and it sounded like that was an average day. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of like, wow, that's some serious commitment. I asked him this question, but I also wanted to ask it to you. Have you tried plastic reeds for your doubling needs?
Yes, I'm not currently using any regularly. I know you've done some giveaways in an interview, I think, with Ligier. Mm-hmm. I've been very impressed with their single reeds. I have not gotten to try their double reeds. I hear the bassoon reed is getting some attention, some positive attention. And they just recently released an oboe reed, although it's a European style reed. So probably, even if it's a great reed, probably is not what I want to play on anyway. I'll be waiting for them to come out with an American cut reed. Yeah, I've been impressed with those. I've tried some other synthetic reeds that I've been less impressed with. But I think in our lifetimes, I think we're going to see this happen. I think, we may see synthetic reeds become good enough that they're a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that people feel so differently about. And I was interested in your opinion, particularly after hearing about your article with the clarinet materials. I was wondering if it was sort of a similar result or opinion for you, but...
Yeah, I don't know. It's acoustically a little bit of a different issue, mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't see why. For years it seemed like plastic reeds were kind of a joke, or like you'd use them just for marching band or something like that. But with the Ligier and some others showing a lot of promise in the last 10 years or so, I don't see why we can't get there. Get to plastic reeds that are so good that we go. Why are we still playing on cane?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting though, because although I do kind of feel sometimes that my best reeds are always the cane, but in a doubling situation where you're switching, and is it better to have a dry reed or one that is not quite as perfect? What would you think about that?
Yeah, that's a tough call to make. I've done it both ways. Used cane reeds in a doubling situation, and just done everything I can to keep them wet and keep them ready to go. Mm-hmm. And I've used the plastic reeds too, and there are advantages and disadvantages on either side.
So, of course, you teach at Delta State University, also multiple woodwinds, and we've been talking about how you plan your day as far as practice and gigs and all that, but how do you plan a lesson like this?
Oh, well, I really enjoy the fact that, I'll have a clarinetist come in for a lesson, and then they leave, and a saxophonist comes in, and they leave, and an oboist comes in. I think you just have to consider all the things that you do to prepare to be a good clarinet teacher. The materials that you might gather, or, kind of selecting your curriculum, what kinds of books and repertoire that you like to use. And you just have to make sure that you do that homework on each of the instruments. It seems like sometimes when people are teaching secondary instruments, like maybe someone who's primarily a saxophonist, and they decide, well, I play enough clarinet that I can try teaching some lessons on the side on clarinet. But they're trying to use all the same materials they were using on saxophone because they just don't know the clarinet repertoire well enough. And that I've got this etude book that I like for saxophone. So is there a clarinet version of it? And, your clarinetists will be better off if you get them using the tried and true clarinet stuff. So I think you have to, really take it seriously, really do your homework.
Are any of your students, though, taking the actual multiple woodwind stream as well? They must be, eh?
Oh, no, we actually do not offer that here.
Oh, interesting.
We're a pretty small university. You would find degrees like that in the largest universities, at least here in the U.S. You find them in the largest universities. So, I did degrees at Indiana University, which is a huge music program, and a degree at University of Georgia, which is not as big as Indiana, but it's a flagship state school. And also there are very few degrees like that being offered at the undergraduate level, which I think is probably wise. I think that's something that's better pursued at the graduate level. And the school where I'm at, we in our music department, we're teaching only undergraduate courses at this point.
Do you encourage your students to dabble in other instruments out of curiosity or for any other purpose, or to not?
Well, I don't push them into it. I had teachers that were great doublers and did not push me into it, and I think that's the right choice. My students are music education majors, so they have a fairly clear career path ahead of them that they'll go into public school teaching. If they're going into performance, then it may be worth considering a little bit more seriously the option of doubling. I have had students who have expressed interest in playing multiple instruments and have taught some of them lessons on multiple instruments. And for some of them, that has paid off well. I have a student who got a good public school teaching job and was teaching, I think, flute and oboe for them, even though he had been a saxophone major. Now things have shuffled around a little bit. Now he's teaching their saxophone students. So there is some value in that if you want it. I would put that caveat out there that if you're doubling reluctantly, you're not going to have a good time, and you're probably not going to be very successful at it. It's something that I think you have to really want to do, and not everybody does, and that's okay. But I wanted to do it, and it worked out well for me, and that's the case for some people.
Is there a point where you feel like a student is too young or it's too early to double?
You have to take them on a case-by-case basis, but in general, I would say that undergraduate music majors kind of need to do two things in terms of their playing. And one is to learn the technical stuff, learn how to operate the machine that is the instrument, or that is the instrument and body together. And the other thing that they need to do is to learn to be musicians. So they need to learn you might call them the soft skills of musicianship, like listening and like telling if something is in tune or not. And if it's out of tune, is it sharp or is it flat? And learning how to play a phrase that goes somewhere, and learning how to structure your performance of a repertoire movement so that it tells the story of the form of that movement. And my feeling is that if you are trying to do the technical stuff on more than one instrument, then that's about all you can handle. Mm-hmm. So for most undergraduate students, I would say they need to focus on one instrument, their strongest instrument, so that there is some bandwidth left available to learn to be a musician. And then beyond that point, if you're interested in pursuing doubling, I started taking some lessons on flute and clarinet during the summers as I was coming towards the end of my undergraduate degree, and then dove in a little more seriously at the master's degree level with a 5-instrument degree program. I think for most people that probably makes more sense to do it that way.
So almost wait until you're done with your undergrad type thing to really get into it for real.
Yeah. For a student that wanted to do multiple woodwinds seriously at an undergraduate level, first of all, there are very few programs that offer it. But I would say that should be somebody who has already had significant training and achievements on multiple instruments already at that point.
So what do you say then to high school programs or even junior high school programs who maybe have kids playing saxophone in the jazz band, but clarinet in the concert band, and maybe, does that happen down in the States too, quite a bit?
Yeah, it does. And it here in Mississippi, where football is such a big thing, marching band is also a very big thing. So if they have students who are playing, for example, oboe or bassoon, then they're certainly marching some other instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it does happen. I think that's fine. I think if everybody's having a good time, then great. And that's a little maybe lower pressure situation.
Absolutely.
If they are a college music major, then there are certain standards that they have to meet in order to graduate and go out into the world prepared.
Yeah, it's sort of apples and oranges, I suppose, the pre-college and the college level. But let's say for a second there's someone preparing for a college degree such as yours, or university degree such as yours. What is some advice you'd give them in general about how to have the best audition possible and have the best chance at getting into university?
I would say get some private lessons if you possibly can, as early as you can. If I could go back and do that differently, I would beg my parents to put me in saxophone lessons right away. I started playing saxophone at age 10 and started taking lessons in high school, taking private lessons in high school. And compared to some students, that already put me behind, compared to some of the students that I later were my classmates in college. So as soon as you can, it does cost money, and it is time investment, and but if it makes sense for you, if you're headed towards a music degree, then get some lessons as soon as you can. Have a frank talk with that teacher about equipment, about what kind of instrument you will need in order to be successful in college. Even better, get in touch with the teacher at the university that you're hoping to go to. I think a lot of teachers these days are very practical about it, as I try to be, and say, there are a number of acceptable options here, including some that are less expensive. But there are teachers out there who say, no, you have to play on what I say you should play on. And so you need to be prepared for that and know about that. So there's that. I would say get some instruction early on. When it comes to the audition process, my advice is relax. I get so many students coming in for auditions, and they are so nervous and so tied up in knots that they don't play at their best. And frankly, I'm not expecting them to play a perfect audition. I'm looking for potential. I'm looking to see what kind of player they are in general, more than I'm looking at how well can they execute this one audition piece. But I get students that are so nervous that they knock on the door for their audition, and then they go, "Oh, was I not supposed to knock on the door?" No, come in, and they put their music on the music stand. They say, "Oh, is this the music stand I'm supposed to use?" Just relax.
Yeah.
just enjoy the experience, and play your instrument, and understand that you will be nervous probably, and that probably will affect your playing. But college music professors listen to nervous students play all day long.
Yeah.
We are used to that. We know what we're hearing, and we are listening for your potential. And that's going to come through. I'm not that concerned about whether you manage to hit the high G sharp in measure 42. I'm concerned about, do you have good tone? Do you have a good overall approach to the instrument? Do you have a certain degree of fluency on the instrument in general? Are you able to play musically? So I'm looking for those kinds of things. I'm not that concerned about the little details of a missed note here or there.
I think that's super important, because I think it's great advice. A lot of times students, they trip over a note and let themselves just fall down, Yeah,
it snowballs. One little thing goes wrong, and then they're so nervous that everything goes wrong.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. Thanks for sharing that. So before we wrap up here, we've got the lightning round, which is 5 or 6 really quick questions, all to be answered in less than a minute. But is there anything else you wanted to share with the audience before we go ahead and do that?
Well, I would just like to say I've been listening to the podcast since the very beginning, and have been enjoying it. I always look forward to the new episodes.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, it's wonderful to have so many guests on and get a chance to speak to so many people. And if you do have questions out there, remember, you can always submit them at www.clarineat.com. And do remember to go to the website also to sign up for the email mailing list for a chance to win giveaways and receive coupons and other such things on the website. So, the lightning round. If I was to walk over to your music stand right now, what would I find?
Okay, I'm reaching for it. I'm in my university office right here. Okay, I've got the David Height Artistic Studies Book 2 from the German School. That's Behrman Clarinet Studies. Those are always worth coming back to, I think. I've got a piece that is new to me. It's called My Aunt Gives Me a Clarinet Lesson by Mark W. Phillips, and this is a piece for clarinet and percussion and dancer/narrator. So that looks like a fun one. Someone that I know nearby wants to play it on a recital, so I'm going to be playing the clarinet part. If we can find a dancer/narrator, that apparently has been a little bit of an issue. I've got Walt Weitzkopf's book, Intervallic Improvisation, The Modern Sound, A Step Beyond Linear Improvisation. That's been interesting. Been working on that on saxophone a little bit. Got the Barrett Complete Oboe Method. I've got the, let's see, this is the oboe 1 part to The Messiah. And I've got an edition of the 6 Bach Flute Sonatas.
My God, this is a big stand you got.
It is. It's not. I can't lift it up. It just falls all the way back down.
A breeze in the office blows it over.
Yeah.
What is one book that you'd recommend all clarinetists read? It doesn't have to be a music book.
Okay, this one's going to be tough to do in under a minute. Okay. I'll try. So my feeling is that there are a lot of books out there that have this same problem we talked about earlier of very vague pedagogy or pedagogy that is outdated and is being passed down in the name of, well, my teacher said this, and so that goes in my book. Yeah. So I think you have to really read critically and realize that even if the book is by your very favorite clarinetist, it may not be a great book. So I'm going to throw this one out there. This will be a curveball, I think. But I'm going to suggest that everybody read The Flute Book by Nancy Toff. Oh. It, of course, is about flute playing. There's information in there that would be useful to woodwind players of any stripe. But that, for me, is an example of a really excellent pedagogical book that is very clear, is very logical, is very well thought out, that is not afraid to break from sort of the conventional wisdom when the conventional wisdom doesn't seem to hold up. So I'd say read that and then use that as a sort of jumping off point for further study, maybe into more clarinet related things, and ask yourself, is this of the kind of quality that it could be? Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to check that one out myself. What is the best piece of advice you ever received, and who gave it to you? Well, two pop to mind, and they're from the same person. Ray Smith was my saxophone professor at Brigham Young University for my undergraduate degree. He's also an incredible doubler, just really, really wonderful clarinetist. But he gave me two pieces of advice. One was surround yourself with musicians who are better than you. Mm-hmm. And that's been great advice. I just did a recital and got to play with a faculty colleague who's a pianist who is definitely a musician who's better than me. So I feel very fortunate to get to play with her and have her kind of lift the level of my own performance. So that's one thing. The other piece of advice that he gave me that I will kind of paraphrase is to make every performance an act of service to your audience. So make it less about yourself and less about, how I look or how I sound or, am I meeting my own standard, and make it more about, is this something that is enjoyable to my audience? Is it moving my audience? Is it inspiring my audience? And I find that when I take that attitude, my audience has a better experience and I have a better experience. I play better when I can kind of forget about myself and make it about them. Yeah, it's an interesting point, and I don't want to sidetrack too much here, ruining my own lightning round rules, but sometimes I feel like that's why in this day and age, pop music and jazz music is a little more successful commercially than classical, and because they do kind of focus more on the experience and the outcome of the
of the actual event in that way and the performance. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, what is your all-time favorite piece of music? I know that's a hard question, but
Yeah, nope, pass. Can't do it.
pass. Okay. What about this week? Is there one today on the way here you enjoyed more than others?
Yeah, that's a really tough one.
Okay.
I had a student in earlier today, and an oboe student, and I played for her just a little snippet of the slow movement of the Sanson oboe sonata, which is one that I always really enjoy and relish playing. On clarinet, maybe I really like the Debussy Rhapsody.
Yeah, one of my favorites too. I've never had the chance to see it performed with orchestra, though. Always with piano.
I'm not sure I've ever seen it live with orchestra.
Yeah, it's on my. Actually, it was performed here once by Steve Amslow, who's the principal in our local orchestra, and I missed it for some reason. I don't know what I was thinking.
Oh.
Anyways, and if I was to give you a time machine to go meet any musician or composer, past or present, who would it be and why?
Wow, that's another very tough one. Maybe either J.S. Bach. That's probably kind of a gimme, or maybe Hindemith. Those are composers that, in my mind, kind of have some things in common. That their music, to me, seems like it is very logical. There's that word again, I guess. We're learning something about me today, maybe. But it's also music that is kind of no nonsense. They both are composers that kind of like they'll give you a theme, and then without a lot of flourish, without a lot of extended transition, just give you another theme. And then when it comes back, you recognize it immediately. And there's just something that, to me personally, I don't know if I could tell you why, but something that appeals to me about that. I feel like those are guys I could hang with and get along with. It's
interesting because both of those composers are also, in many ways, could be considered doublers. And Hindemith in particular was quite famous for performing, the different pieces he wrote on the instrument that he had composed it for. This is so weird to me, but
that's right. I'd not thought about that angle on it, but yeah, maybe that's why they appealed to me. We'll go talk about instruments.
I always try to imagine Hindemith playing that bassoon. Every time I hear the bassoon sonata, that's all I can imagine is Hindemith standing there giving it a go.
Yeah.
So anyways, thanks for a great conversation. If people are interested in learning more about you, where can they find you online outside of bretpimentel.com?
Well, that really is the hub for it. Come to bretpimentel.com. And I do have a Twitter account that's at Woodwind Ninja, just all one word. I don't tweet much myself. Mostly it's just automatic tweets of my new blog posts.
Oh, okay.
I do that on Facebook, too. I have a page, Bret Pimentel Woodwinds, and that is... my pledge on that is that it's just my new blog posts, nothing else.
Okay.
I personally use Facebook as well, and I've connected with a number of musicians that way too.
Yeah, it's getting so hard nowadays because we've got Facebook, Pinterest, oh God, I don't even know, Google Plus, which I don't know anyone who uses. There's just so many different things. But yeah, maybe the website, and then there's a contact form on there. People can get in touch if they want. And
absolutely, yeah. If you tweet at me, I will see those and we'll respond. But I'm not hanging out a lot on Twitter.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show today, and I look forward to chatting again soon.
Thank you.
Sanding, shaping, balancing. For centuries, mastering your instrument meant mastering these crafts too. But now, D'Addario is refining craftsmanship for the 21st century by refining their reeds and mouthpieces with the world's most innovative techniques, so you can spend less time sanding, shaping, and balancing, and more time perfecting your own craft. To learn more about the new era of craftsmanship from D'Addario Woodwinds, visit d'addario.com/woodwinds.